Hey, good people. Welcome back to the WPMRR WordPress podcast. I'm Joe.
And I'm Elphaba.
And you're listening to the WordPress Business Podcast. We had someone pick a character who I didn't know about. So you stumped the Schwab on this one. Elphaba, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you very much. Well, it was a choice between my science fiction self, which is not as prominent, and my Broadway self, which is my thing. So Elphaba is actually a character in the Broadway musical Wicked, which I've seen an embarrassingly large number of times. And so she is what you might think of as the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz. And the musical tells the story of her backstory. And so you actually sympathize with her and you don't think she's as evil as she is. And she sings really well. And she's very cool. Yeah. So that's me.
Gotcha. Very cool. Well, you had two good character selections today. You had Elphaba and you also had Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica, who I probably would have gotten a little better. But this is great. I got to learn a new character today. So awesome. Elphaba, welcome to the podcast, also known as Tara Claeys, one of my favorite WordPress people of all time. This is so fun. I'm glad we finally got the chance to connect here. So I know a little bit about the WordPress stuff you do, but why don't you tell listeners a little bit more about what you do with WordPress?
Yeah, so we met because we both attend the WordPress DC meetup. And so I am now one of the organizers of that meetup. And
you are? I didn't know you were officially an organizer now. Yeah.
I'm officially an organizer. I've been officially an organizer of the spinoff in DC. So we're kind of all one team. And yeah, so I love the WordPress community in general. And the DC community is really strong too. So it's great to be a part of that organizing team. So I do that. I have an agency called DesignTLC that is here in Arlington, Virginia, and we specialize in websites for small schools, camps, enrichment programs, and nonprofits, especially nonprofits that are have some kind of education-related mission. And that's a fairly new thing to actually be out and proud about that specialization. Up until the past year or so, I pretty much would take any small business, small organization website that came my way and really enjoyed that. And I also have a strategic partnership with a friend and colleague called Nice Work, where we do some larger jobs. She's a designer. So I've worked with WordPress for about 10 years, and that's my work life. My home life is I have 2 grown children who have flown from home and don't live near me. So I have a lot of time to work and think about what I want out of this phase of my life, which is what I'm embarking on. So, yeah.
Yeah, so cool. I feel like a lot of the time when we're talking like, oh, what are you up to? And you're talking about a little bit of travel you're doing, and a lot of time you're traveling to go see your kids, or maybe they're coming to see you, or you're meeting somewhere. So it's nice you get to travel and go see them pretty frequently. It
is. It's a great thing about working for yourself and doing the kind of work we do is that you can do it from anywhere. You don't have to be in an office, and you can work from just about any place you want to. A car, a beach, an airport.
Yeah, I was at a wedding a few weeks ago, and someone was talking about how my husband was driving and I was on my laptop in the passenger seat riding shotgun, getting a little work done. And I was like, I actually, as a remote person, I don't know if I've ever worked in a car like that before. But hey, if you need to get a little extra work done, it's a good time to do it.
It's true. Yeah. I should mention I also have a podcast on which you
Yes, of course we have to talk about that and to tell people a little bit about the pod.
Yeah. It's called Hallway Chats, and we are into our second year. Our third. Yeah, we just started our third year, actually. Are we in our third year? Yeah. We co-host it with Liam Dempsey, and we just have casual chit-chat story sharing from people we meet or who want to meet us who use WordPress. So just people who fly under the radar, maybe people who are not on a lot of podcasts, but who just would like to share their story. So we've been doing that for a while, and we really love meeting people. And a lot of the people that we've had on the show in the beginning now are on a lot of podcasts. So sometimes in some ways we get people maybe comfortable on podcasts or as they're just starting to grow.
Yeah, One of my favorite WordPress podcasts, actually. It's, there's podcast. I'll be the first to admit, I'm pretty frequently looking for people who, a lot of people may already know in the WordPress space.
Right.
And, it helps us to grow our WordPress podcast a little bit. And, I enjoy talking to these people a lot. It gives me an opportunity to open the door and say, hey, come to the podcast. It kind of gives me an excuse to just get to some FaceTime with them and talk to them. So that's great for me. But the reason I love your podcast is because I get to meet so many people who have maybe never been on a podcast before, but who are still incredibly impressive people, or maybe they're just starting their journey towards being impressive. And there's so much knowledge that I gain from those people as well. Sometimes I feel like I've been in WordPress for a long time, and it's hard to know what it's like to be a beginner, or it's hard to know what it's like to be at the real beginning of the journey. Since WP Buff's just, we just did our 4-year Buffiversary a couple months ago. So I gain a lot of value from the podcast. So if people are listening, Hallway Chats, is it hallwaychats.com?
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah. We enjoy it.
Yes. Awesome. And last time we met in person, in real life, it was PressNomics this year. I think we get usually we have we'll see each other at the DC meetup a few times a year. And then the Arlington meetup as well, maybe once or twice, but at more official, automatic sponsored events, or I guess PressNomics is not that, but at official WordPress events. The last one was PressNomics we got to see each other at. So how'd you like that? I had a blast, but what do you think of it?
I liked it. I mean, I've heard about it from so many people, and I've heard that it's more business focused, and because it's not part of automatic or official WordPress, that it's different, and I didn't really know what that meant. I will say, I think as a small agency owner who's not looking necessarily to, grow my business and sell it, a merger and acquisition talk, there were some talks there that definitely were not relevant to me, but then there were some WordPress talks that were eye-opening. So I think that it was a good combination, and it was a great group of people, and the Strebels who put it on are very generous to do it. And so I stayed at an Airbnb with a whole group of women, and we had a great time hanging out and getting to know each other, and went on some hikes. And the house was on a bike path, jogging path on a riverbed. So it was really cool to go out and run along there too. So yeah, it was beautiful. I love Tucson.
Yeah, it was really beautiful out there. I always, every time I go out kind of towards the West Coast, especially in that Southwest area where there's red rocks and cactuses, I'm always oh my God, this is so amazing. The mountains are so beautiful. We don't really get that here in DC, unfortunately. So we have to go out there to get it. But yeah, cool. I enjoyed it as well. It's one of those events where a lot of times I go to WordCamps to talk with the other people who do WordPress business stuff. So this was a good excuse to it was that niche just in its own conference. So I enjoyed that for sure.
Yeah. Did you attend all the talks, or did you?
I went to a few talks, but I was I'm always a big hallway track sort of guy, and the whole conference is kind of a hallway track. So I was, hanging out and talk with people, but I did catch a few. I actually really liked the talk by, I forget the guy's name, but he is the founder of SpyFu, which is SEO competitor software. And it was talking about why you should stay bootstrapped instead of, looking towards VC money. And it was pretty well delivered talk. And I believe in a lot of those points that he was saying.
That was a good talk. I appreciated the points that he made as well.
Yeah, for sure. If hopefully he's not listening, for the guy whose name I forgot, but SpyFu. If you look up SpyFu founder, you'll find him. But yeah, and after PressNomics, you went to another. You've been doing just a little bit of jet setting here in the last few weeks. You were at a second conference for that was thrown by a mutual friend of ours. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I signed up a long time ago for Jennifer Bourne's content camp, and I have been looking forward to it. Content is something that I think any agency person has trouble getting content from their client. And I always say I'm not a writer, even though I know how to write. I try to be a jack of all trades, probably too much. But the idea of having a workshop, which is what that was, where you actually produce some stuff, you produce a schedule or, a marketing message and that type of thing, was really compelling. And she puts on a great event with, this binder that we got with the worksheet stuff in it it's over 600 pages, I think. It's just huge, or a couple hundred. Anyway, it's big.
Nice.
And she had some amazing presenters and speakers there. So I found it to be really, really valuable. And, we went out for dinner with groups of people and lunch was provided. It was healthy. It was a great event and I would definitely recommend it. I don't know if it's something that you would necessarily need to repeat because I think it's, you absorb a lot. It was overwhelming, the amount of content in Content Camp. It was a lot to absorb. It was a long day. And I had trouble deciding if I was there to work on my own business or to think about my client's business or a combination of the two, or which client, which current client would benefit the most from doing some of the thought exercises that they had us go through. Chris Lemma spoke there about storytelling, and that was really great. It really helped me as, when the week that I came back, I worked on finalizing my own website relaunch that had been in process for a few months. And so I think hearing what they had to say and thinking about that, how that applied to my own message was really helpful. So I was able to launch that as a result.
So cool. It's a perfect transition to talk a little bit about the work you do over at DesignTLC, TLC, Tender Loving Care, DesignTLC.com. I noticed, I saw that the new website had launched, and we were just talking about this before we started recording. I can't remember if maybe you emailed me or maybe I saw it on Twitter or something. You said I put it out everywhere, which is for sure the thing to do. But I went to the site and I was like, not that the old site wasn't good, but this one is very well done. And it's also I was very impressed by the copywriting. I thought the copywriting was very on point. So,
oh wow, yeah. Thanks. So it worked. Then you can
there you go. Shout out to Jennifer Bourne, who's done a webinar with us, and has she been on the podcast? I can't remember, but she's done a nice webinar for WP Buff. So it was excellent. So we're good friends of hers too. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the relaunch of the site and kind of how that came to fruition.
Well, it's something I've thought about for a while. I'm friends with Sarah Dunn and have followed her amazingly transparent process that she's gone through in specializing. And I remember she started that right around the same time that I got to know her. And she was doing these videos where she just talked about how she was making a decision to specialize, but she didn't know what she was going to specialize in yet. And she was kind of trying out different things or thinking about it. And I was very skeptical, honestly, because it seemed to me that when I thought about specializing, it was like specializing in a dentist website vertical or a chiropractor or a lawyer, some of the categories of clients who I've worked with. And I just was not excited about it and always thought that what I loved about the way that I worked generally was that I had a wide variety of projects. And so I kind of was I wasn't into the idea of specializing. And I watched her kind of evolve until she sort of organically discovered that what she wanted to do was wedding SEO, which is really specific, right? It's not even just wedding websites, it's SEO for wedding planners and photographers. And so seeing how she jumped into that and she built a separate site for it and really started going after that market, I started to think, maybe there is something about that. And so I give her all the credit for it. I think that for me, I did not plan to choose a specialty. When I looked at the projects that I was doing most recently and had more of an abundance in my portfolio, the clients that I love to work with, I realized that they all had a really common thread, and they all were related to this idea of childhood enrichment and schools and content that focused on pictures of children and talking about programs that help children grow. So having raised children and gone through that process of choosing programs for my own children, I could relate to it as a user and just really loved it, and also loved the sort of the nonprofit end of it as well. So I kind of thought to myself, this is what I love. This is what I should do. And it was just like a light bulb. I wasn't trying to specialize at all. It just was like I woke up one day and realized, wow, I should really do that. So I started to think about it. I started to talk about it a little bit with some people. I started thinking about doing some outbound marketing, meaning I looked for schools in my area and, camps and programs and things, and made some email templates and emailed a few of them. Not that many, because I've never really done that before. Most of my business, all of it really has come word of mouth. So I did get one client from that outreach, and then went back to some of my existing clients that had older sites that I had built, and started doing some refreshes for them. And then I just kind of decided, if I'm going to do this, I should just do it. I should just be all in. And I think there was some reaction of, wow, are you really going to say that so boldly on your homepage, or are you just going to make a landing page for that? And I thought about it, and I kind of just decided that this is what I wanted to be. This is who I want to serve. This is what I want to focus on. And it doesn't mean that I won't ever take another kind of client. It's broad enough that I think it can touch on some other things. But I'm so excited about it. I really it's liberating to be in an environment where you're giving that elevator pitch, and you can say, this is what I do. And I specialize in it because I love it. I'm passionate about it, and I'm good at it. And then to also continue to be better at it. So you're focusing on that one thing, trying to get to know the niche, and reaching out to authority organizations, associations of small schools. And there are some bloggers and some marketers who serve this audience that I'm reaching out to see how I can sort of just I'm not looking to be a big company. There are big companies that build school websites for big schools. I'm not looking for that. This is just the kind of business that I want to have. So,
yeah, so cool. I love the story of kind of falling into your passion after pursuing like kind of more general agency work. Because I think that a lot of times, well, maybe not a lot of times, but sometimes the advice of like purely following your passion can be a little bit detrimental, because you don't know exactly how well, like financially, your passion is going to pay off. And there's that thought process you kind of have to go through. Like, is this something I can afford to raise a family with, live in the DC area with? Like, that's obviously a consideration, but you kind of went about it. You've been doing general WordPress stuff for a little while, and you found that there was a niche that you could survive, and not just survive, but thrive. And sometimes you have to start a little bigger and kind of see what's working, and then take a step back and kind of analyze and say like, oh, I can do what I'm like, more what I'm passionate about, because I have, 2/3 of the websites that come to me are school websites. So I can focus more on that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think thriving is, you can define what that means. It's not necessarily for me all about the pocketbook. Certainly that is important, but it's really more about feeling happy, which is like the big word on my website is happy. People come to me unhappy because their websites are old and they're not updated. I'm not building websites that are mission critical e-commerce sites. They need to communicate well and be easy to use and reflect the personality of who they are. So I think it's, that is the most important thing, is being happy and proud of what I'm doing.
Agreed. And
it's new. It may not work. I mean, I may have a big lull. It's possible that I could talk to you in 6 months and have no clients at all. I'd be surprised about that, but it's quite possible that could happen.
Yeah, there's always that leap of faith you kind of have to make when you rebrand yourself, or you present yourself differently. Is this really going to resonate with people? It's all a test. It's all an experiment. So I think this will do pretty well. But yeah, who knows? The push into focusing more in this niche, I guess I'm also thinking about some of your previous clients. We've talked in the past, and you have a pretty good number of clients, I think, who you've worked with for a long time. Are you planning to continue to work with clients who you've worked with for a long time who aren't schools, or are you kind of planning to maybe pass them off on to a friend or a colleague, someone you trust?
Yeah, no, I'll continue to serve the clients that I have. The most active of which, for the most part, do fit into this category. A couple of them don't, and they are near and dear to my heart as well, even if they're not in the category. So it's not an exclusive thing. It's a guiding force going forward. So yeah, no, I'm not turning any clients away. Certainly if they chose to go somewhere else, that might have happened no matter what. But so far it seems to be a good fit for them too, just because they know me and they're happy with how I service their business.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
So design TLC, also kind of like the fact that you're putting on, the front of your website, like you want to be happy with your website, you're not happy with your website, like be happy. Like you're obviously someone who the like pursuit of happiness and wanting to do a job and work a job that makes you happy is really important. So in a way, you're also it looks like you're trying to, and hopefully do, attract people who feel the same way. And that's, to me, is like the biggest determination of if your job is going to be happy, if you get to work with other people who like have that same kind of definition and think the same as you do. So if you can attract those people and work with them and build them websites, like your life's going to be super happy. So that's cool.
Hopefully. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's what we all want is happiness and comfort. So yeah, I think that I had a marketing and advertising background before I had kids. And then when I started my family, I stayed home and I started a little cottage industry type of thing, doing illustration of little pictures of kids. And so I think I've always been in this kind of focus. This is just part of my personality. And so it's really nice to realize that at this point in my life and be able to apply it to what I'm choosing to do with my career.
Yeah, I totally hear that. I want to touch on this little point, not even a little point, but this point you made about not being super into like this area of like wanting to like grow super fast or like be acquired someday. I think a lot of people have this idea, like when you start a business, when you start a company, that should be your goal. And of course that's your goal. Like, why wouldn't it be? And, I think in my own pursuit of growing a business, I for sure had some of that thinking when I'm growing the business. Like I do want to grow a business and I want to have, a lot of employees, and that's my pursuit, and everyone's pursuit is a little different, but I want to be really like, I want to hear a little bit more about what you have to say about not wanting to do that, because I think that's equally as valid as someone who wants to do that. I don't think that one is better than the other or more important. There are a lot of people, especially like I've been hearing so much about people wanting to, instead of growing, like stay small and have more of a compact team. And honestly, in a lot of situations, a lot of people I know who run smaller businesses are like financially better off than people who run like bloated, bigger businesses, like better profit margins, like less stress. And so talk a little bit more about like why that's your mentality about this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that's another realization that I've come to in the last year or so. I'm 51 years old and my kids are grown, and I had a career in the corporate world, and I had a little tiny business, and I've grown my business. And I have friends who have grown businesses and have staff of, 12 people and an office space they rent. And that's not something that interests me at this point in my life, because I am averse to the risk, first of all, and the stress of having to hire and fire people. More than I do have a couple people that work for me, and they're awesome. And I've been really fortunate with that part-time help. But I don't want to be responsible for somebody's full livelihood. I don't want to have to make rent, and I like working from home. And those are things that I have felt for a long time, but have not been super proud to say, because it's not the thing, right? When you're in these conferences, or you're with some of these amazing people that have grown or are growing or planning to grow, and they're younger, you can feel a little self-conscious about that. Owning it is a great thing when you finally decide to own it. And so that book, The Company of One, really validated for me what I had believed all along, which is that this is enough, right? This is enough. I don't have to have, I don't have to have a 7-figure business in order to be successful and to be happy. I can do the best I can with what I have, and I can only take on so much. I don't want to be stressed out. I stress myself out enough as it is. But 3 projects at a time for one person is enough. And so whatever that means financially, that means I'm not going to grow much more than that because I can't, there's not a bandwidth to do more. So, and your podcast is about monthly recurring revenue, and that's a part of it too. The more, if you do a dozen projects a year as a 1 or 2 person agency, and they're all on recurring with you, then every year you're adding another dozen in. So your recurring revenue hopefully will increase. And if you bring on new projects, that's your non-recurring revenue. And looking for ways to better serve those clients, both because I want to be able to offer them more, also brings on the opportunity to have more recurring revenue. So when we first started, we just built websites and we started maintaining them. And then we started offering SEO. And then we started, so more and more. Now I have a photographer who is working with me. So offering more services may not all be related to monthly recurring revenue, but it's just broadening the service selection that we have for our clients. So getting into what you talk about here, I think that there's a great opportunity for a small company to get recurring revenue that's more passive without having to bring on lots of staff. I'm saying this to somebody who's bringing on lots of stuff and growing, but you're also a lot younger than me. So if I were your age, I might have a completely different take on things.
Yeah, that's true. I know we all have a different definition of success, and it's not just important that that's the fact. It's important that we all need to define what success looks like for ourselves and actually actively do that, because you could grow a company like WP Buffs to whatever size we are now. And we're doing well and all that, but you could be miserable doing what I do because that wasn't your goal to grow a company like that in the first place. And you were much, much happier as a single freelancer doing work, on your own and being able to do everything in your business. But same the other way, like someone like me knows that when I was freelancing, I wasn't super happy because I just that wasn't my definition of success right there. But, flash forward 10 years, I may have a different definition of success. So continuing to know the self-discovery is the hardest part of this whole thing. It's who am I and what do I really want and who am I really? It sounds a little fuzzy, but really that's one of the toughest pieces for me is really figuring out what direction do I want to go in so that I can feel really confident and comfortable driving in that direction and not feeling the potential social pressure that you talked about growing, that of course you have to be growing, or what are you doing? It's actually bullshit, so I was actually trying to Google that book while you were talking. It's Paul Jarvis.
Yes.
And it's called Company of One.
Company of One. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great book.
WordPress space.
Yeah. It's a great book. And it really did validate for me. I have friends who are so stressed out. Their cash flow is so low. I've done some contract work for, a friend that has an agency, a social media marketing agency. And, they have great fun. Their Instagram feed is awesome. Their team is young and they're always pictures of them drinking at this event or that event. So hip. That would be awesome. But I also know that sometimes they don't pay themselves because they have to pay their staff and they have to pay all of their bills. And then when their big, huge client is late paying them, then everything falls apart. So having low overhead and, being fiscally responsible with your business funds is pretty easzy to do when it's just you that's managing that,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I feel like people look at a business like mine and they'll see success from the outside, but there's a lot of inner workings that go on that it's not as peachy as it always seems. I'll tell everyone that pretty brutally, honestly. I think we're fortunate that we've done a good enough job where I've actually never had a month where I couldn't pay myself. We've never had a month where a big client didn't pay us, and we've had months I've had to return $18,000 one month because we accidentally overcharged a client by $18,000. That's a story for another podcast. But
wow,
that was
makes you kind of sick to your stomach, or no?
And it was for sure tough. I should probably dive into that, but I'll leave the audience hanging on that one for a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds like a good story.
We've never had that happen in the business where I felt like we were so tight, I wasn't going to make payroll, and that's really nice. But I could easily have gone another direction one month. Like, you know, who am I to say, like, I know everything? I know nothing. Like, it could have easily one month totally gone wrong. Next month, it could easily, like, things could go awry. And so there's this aspect of growing a business that it's defined by turbulence. There is no other way to do it. And if you don't want to go through turbulence growing a business, you probably shouldn't grow a business. You probably should, you know, stick somewhere that's a little bit more, I don't know, in some cases it's not more comfortable because, you know, as a freelancer or as a small agency, you do have a lot of work to do. But I think that if that's your definition of what success looks like, I know a lot of small companies that do awesome and they just like chill and do great work and love their lives and love their work and love their clients. And the growth is just not a piece of their formula for success. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I think I totally agree with that. Yeah. And growth also means different things. I'm growing all the time. It's just, and I mean, my checkbook has grown over the years too, but if it stops growing, I'm cool where it is now. Like that's totally fine. It's good. And we're a dual income family. So I'm very fortunate that way. And my kids are I'm almost done with college. So, you know, we're like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel here.
It's nice to have friends like you in the WordPress space. I'm always looking for parents and people who have kind of been through that journey of doing WordPress stuff and being parents. And so, it's nice to have your view in that, so I can just bounce stuff off you and ask you questions. But I'm already starting to think about, like, I know I shouldn't really be thinking about it yet because it's so far in the future, but like, you know, now's the time to start thinking about like, all right, so when are we going to start saving for college? Like when do I start putting money in the college fund? And
right?
So yeah, I know.
It goes by so fast. Yeah, it goes by so fast, and you talk about sort of figuring out who you are, or defining yourself, and you just have to let that change over time. I'm definitely, and I think your life goes in phases. You have your life until you become independent, and then you have your life until if you choose to, you know, connect with a partner in some way. Then you have that. If you choose to have children, then you have that phase, and then you have the phase after that. And then you die. How sad.
One of my favorite movies is it's called Sunshine, and it's this sci-fi movie about this is a little bit of a tangent, but I want to tell it anyway because this is one of my favorite movies. It's about the sun is running out of fuel, and so it's about Icarus 2. It's the second mission to go and relight the sun, and they don't know what happened to the first mission, but they have to send a second one, and it's the last one because the Earth doesn't have any more resources to build another bomb. It's such a big bomb, so it's the last ditch effort to relight the sun. And there's this line in the movie where the computer is talking to one of the people, and he's saying like, "You are dying," and it's like, "Yes." He's like, "Yes, we're all dying. I know that, you know." And it's like, "No, you're actually running out of oxygen. There's too many people on the ship." And he's like, "Oh my God!" So I know that reminded me of that, but you know, we're all dying, all, you know, at some point. So sorry, I took the left turn there, but
that's okay. I was not trying to bring anybody down there.
Sorry, sorry, listeners. This podcast just turns into sci-fi hour if you're not careful. So awesome. I'm glad we got to talk about that a little bit. This is like not really anywhere in our show notes, but that's why I love doing the show, because we just get to, you know, we start talking about something and it turns out to be a really important topic and one that deserves attention, especially in the like kind of state of where WordPress is right now. Christy and I just recorded an episode about like kind of the stuff going on in WordPress. Now there's a lot of money coming into WordPress, and it's the community seems like it's this whole open source thing. Like, is it really open source? I don't know. It's a complex conversation, and we do it better justice in that episode. But with a lot of money coming into WordPress, and every week there's a new acquisition announcement. WP Tavern, this company acquired that company. WP Engine acquired Flywheel. Like, you know, the Saturday Drive team acquired Caldera. You know, it feels like every week there's something new, and it makes you think, at least sometimes makes me think like, okay, like what's next for our business? Like what's the, you know, how are we going to be featured in Tavern? And it's like, not really like a healthy way to like think about my business. So I really do actively try to like, you know, I like to know about it, but to try and compare myself with what others are doing is not super healthy. And I think we can all take a page out of your book, Tara, and just say like, I'm going to do my thing regardless of who it was featured here or the news here or whatever.
Yeah. It's easier said than done, right? I mean, it is like you get in these conferences, and especially if you meet people who run big companies and are super successful. It's very intimidating. And you feel like I have felt like I have nothing to offer them. And you do. I think your point is sort of like social media in general. You look at a company or you look at somebody's Facebook or Instagram and you think, oh my gosh, their life is so perfect. How come my life isn't like that? And it's not always what it looks like. But I think also there are so many little cliche sayings going around. One of them is like when you're feeling sorry for yourself and you're looking at somebody else and thinking that it's better, and you think, why is this bad thing happening to me? Like, why me? I've heard this recently and it really stuck with me, is like, why not me? Like, why should bad things happen to other people? Or, why should other people suffer and I shouldn't? Like, why not me? Of course, it's spread around, I guess is my point. I'm getting very philosophical here, but it's all spread around. We have our good days and our bad days, and comparing yourself to others is, I don't think, easy to stop doing. You'll probably never stop doing it, but reminding yourself and saying it out loud that this is enough and I'm happy with my life today, tomorrow, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Spending more time trying to think about the things you're thankful for as opposed to the things that maybe you don't have in your life or that aren't going right for you. Like you said, easier said than done, but trying to keep that like grateful mindset is important. I mean, everyone's heard this about social media, so I'm not saying anything new here, but, you only see the, best pieces of best moments of people's lives. And, people are going to post to Instagram when they're on, this great trip with their partner, but they're not really posting when they lose a job or when something negative happens to them. And so you go to this feed, you see all this good shit happening to people, and you're like, why isn't my life amazing like all these other people's? And it's like, man, it's the same thing as when I talked about my business a little earlier. Like, from the outside, things may look cool, and a lot of stuff is going well, but there's for sure pieces of the business where we're trying to put fires out too, and we're trying to figure out stuff that's not going right, and it's not all just like peaches and cream. And it's the same with a lot of people you see around on social media. A lot of your probably people you're listening, like your closest friends, like you think them very well, but
right.
I bet if you were to live a week in their lives, you would have a very, very different impression about how their life is going based on like really what's going on and not just the things that they decide to divulge you. So yeah, I don't know. You're right. We're getting a little philosophical right now, but this is for sure an important like piece of mental health for founders, for entrepreneurs, for freelancers, for employees, for everybody to try and like frame yourself so that you can be happy with your life, because so much about happiness in life is about framing things correctly. And if you can do that, you can bring a little more happiness to your life.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's a good thing about the WordPress community, is I think people are generally pretty open about these things. We're not the first people to talk about it, even publicly. There's a lot of sharing about tough times and self-consciousness and bad feelings and good feelings. So I think that's a great thing about this community, is that we do feel comfortable sharing this kind of stuff and helping others to understand that they're not the only ones feeling it. It's great.
Yes, totally agree. I think that is a perfect place to wrap up this episode for the day. Last thing I always like guests to do is just tell people where they can find you online, like social media or websites and all that jazz.
So my website is DesignTLC.com, and I'm Tara Claeys on Twitter, and pretty much anything, anywhere on the web, you could Google me, and it's CLAEYS.
Very nice. One last thing I will say about Tara is that she was one of our biggest cheerleaders for WP Buffs when we were getting started. So honestly, like back when WP Buffs was like it was me and like a couple freelancers doing 24/7 support. It was hard and it was not ideal, but it was what we were doing. And Tara was one of the people who was like, yeah, go WP Buffs. And it's important. I always try to remember the people who were there with me from the beginning. And Tara, you were definitely one of those people. So I'd also like to thank you.
It's great to see how you've grown. Yeah. And I look forward to seeing it more.
Yeah, there you go. I said last thing just now, but the real last thing, I always ask guests to ask our audience for a little 5-star iTunes review for the podcast. So if you wouldn't mind giving a little ask, I'd appreciate it.
I will. I'm totally prepared for this because I have been on Kyle and Adam's podcast, Get Options podcast, and notoriously rapped for them on that. So I'm not going to rap for you, but I did write a poem for this little ending for you. So are you ready?
Ready.
Here we go. It's a great show with Christy and Joe. This podcast has letters. It just keeps getting better. It's called WPMRR. Please give them 5 stars.
Wow. That's one of the all-time greatest review asks on the show. After
you can ask Kyle Marr to set that to a rap beat for you.
Yeah, there you go. I will for sure. Kyle, if you're listening, you know what you have to do. Send it to us so we got it. Cool. Thank you. If you do leave us a review in iTunes, make sure you leave Tara's name in the comments. Maybe something you learned from the episode or something you took away, so we can shoot a little screenshot to Tara and thank her for the review. If you are leaving a review, WPMRR.com/iTunes redirects you right there. Make it nice and easy for you. If you're a new listener to the show, oh, and by the way, if you're leaving a 5-star review for WPMRR podcast, make sure you leave a review for Tara's podcast. Tara, remind people of the domain again.
Hallway Chats.
Hallwaychats.com. Hallwaychats.com. If you're leaving one review, just leave 2. Like, it takes you 1 minute.
Sure, that would be
just
great.
Double review. Perfect.
Thanks.
The new listeners out there, if you're a new listener, feel free to go and binge some old episodes of the WPMRR WordPress podcast. You already binge all your TV shows and Hulu and Netflix and all that stuff. Why not binge something that'll help you grow your business? Check out some old episodes. I'm sure Christy and I have talked about a topic that you are having a challenge with right now, so that episode could help you today. If you have questions for us in the show, we love to do Q&A episodes. So shoot those questions into yo@WPMRR.com and we will get them answered live here on the show. WPMRR.com. If you're an agency or a freelancer and maybe you're having an off month or like you're not bringing in as much revenue as last month and you're kind of tired of that roller coaster of revenue or that feast or famine, check out WPMRR.com. We've open sourced WP Buffs so that you can offer care plans to your clients and learn how to do all that stuff. Our goal is to help you be twice as successful as we have at WP Buffs in half the time. So check it out. We're doing a 75% discount right now. So if you want to grab that, now's a great time to do it. So WPMRR.com for that. That is it for this week. We will be in your podcast players again next Tuesday. Tara, thanks again for being on. It's been real.
Thanks so much for having me, Joe. Have a great day.